Hello and welcome back to another show of From the Field. I'm your host, Casey Orr. I'm a solution architect based out of Wellington, New Zealand. And I believe we still have quite a lot of people on the stream from the previous show, Howdy Partner. So welcome back. And funnily enough, we actually are joined here by Michael J. He is from a partner in New Zealand called Leven. Not Leven, sorry, that's a city in New Zealand. I always get that wrong. It drives me absolutely bonkers. And yeah, if you know, I'm back in the one of these office pods. These office pods that you can get are really, really amazing. The soundproof ones. Like if your office doesn't have them, I would probably demand that your office management gets it. It makes life so much better, especially at meetings, because you don't have to have like everyone chatting and essentially sounds like you're in a nightclub when you're trying to talk to
Yeah,
customers or anyone else.
that's
Yeah, you
exactly
know
how
what
it
I'm talking about.
sounds over in our
Mm.
office. Yeah,
And I see that you're also very zoomed in at the moment. You
I
just want to
am.
be large in life. You're not normally that big, right? You're not like 7 foot.
True, true. I'm also not normally this red either, so I think it's just a light above me making me look a bit bright and red and like
It's
a
all good.
tomato.
Yeah, as long as you're not embarrassed to be here, and that's all that matters.
No,
So
no.
what we're going to be talking about today is Grafana, right? And we're going to be having a bit of a deeper dive into the use cases and whatnot.
Yep, yep, exactly that. Cool. So I might bring up my slide quick. So once you can see that, you're free to put that up.
There we go. Yep.
Cool, cool. So hey there, guys. So I'm just glad to be here. Talk about one of the lesser known AWS A services and why and how you might want to use it to improve your observability. So a little bit about me first. So my name is Michael Jerry. I'm an AWS cloud engineer here at Eleven. So we're part of the Spark business group. So before working at Leven, I used to work on a lot of on-premises platforms. So that's where a lot of tools like Grafana are often utilized. So it was a really good time for me to kind of see how to use it and where its use cases might be. And there's a lot of good use cases with it with the new Amazon managed service as well. So going to dive into that today. So a bit
And
about this. Sorry.
sorry, Michael, we're also saying that hybrid setups are becoming more and more popular, especially in the more like compliance related industries. So yeah,
Yeah,
as you can see,
yeah.
Grafana definitely becoming a bit more popular and front of mind for a lot of businesses.
Yeah, true, true. So, yeah, there's a lot of use cases there, especially where you can't really get the reach of CloudWatch across your whole stack. Uh, Grafana is really, really good to use there. So here's just a bit of a mandatory slide about my employer. So don't worry, it's only just one. So CCR 11 are part of the cloud, pretty much just the cloud part of the Spark Business Group. So if you're a Spark client or you have a relationship with Spark and you want to do stuff in the cloud, just reach out and talk to us, being CCL or Levin. And before we get on to it, just a bit about what I'll have a talk about today. So we're just going to go through pretty much just the basics of monitoring observability, just to give everyone a bit of a refresher. We're going to go into why you might use Grafana over some of the AWS native services. And then we're going to go and actually set it up and go over some use examples. I've got a bit of stuff that we can continue on with AWS Managed Prometheus, and then we'll go over the observability workshop, which is very cool, and it's a way you can really get your hands dirty. So excited to go over all that stuff there as well. So I'm sure we're all familiar with the core AWS AM monitoring and observability services. But what might be a bit lesser known is just the sheer amount that you have. So it's really good just to have all these services that can assist you in gaining clarity, not only over your environment health, but also how it is utilized. You can make some better decisions. So to assist with that, I'm going to be going over Amazon managed Grafana and also going over a little bit about Amazon managed Prometheus, and there's some extra stuff in there if you are interested in learning about that as well. But first, let's have a look at the core AWS monitoring services and how you can use those. because that's kind of a bit of a prerequisite to having good observability, is being able to actually capture all of that data in the first place. So we've got a quick introduction to the AWS monitoring services for those who are new, or maybe just want a short refresher. So first of all, we have AWS CloudWatch. I'm sure you all know about it. So it is integrated into every AWS service that you'll be using, and it pretty much just gathers and stores all of those metrics for you, and it can organize these into simple graphs. You can normally just see around the AWS console. So if you ever deployed an EC2 instance and you've seen the CPU usage, then you know what I'm talking about. What is a bit lesser known about it is you can actually build dashboards from it, which is kind of a cool way to sort of put a bunch of related metrics into sort of a single pane of glass that you can use to monitor your services. So we'll be having a bit of a talk about that and how that compares to Grafana later on. Now, next we have AWS X-Ray. It's a bit of an underrated service, but it's used for more of observability than for monitoring, but you can still capture some metrics from it and put it into CloudWatch. So it's still quite useful for us as a data source. It's a bit more complex to implement than something like CloudWatch, as you have to actually set it up inside your application and also run a daemon. But it's very useful for troubleshooting more complex, esoteric problems with your application. And
Yeah,
lastly,
we quite often see X-ray being taken up for event-based architectures mostly, and asynchronous
yeah,
calls where you kind of have that disjoint entry points and how it flows through the systems.
yeah, it would definitely be very, very good for stuff like that, for sure. And lastly, we have CloudTrail as well. So I consider CloudTrail to be more of an observability service, as it records all of the API calls that are made in your account. But it can be very useful for diagnosing issues, because you can see pretty much the results of the API call, why it may not have worked. And it's also quite useful for security analysis as well, since you can set it up to look for some sus actions on your account that maybe are not consistent with your regular usage, which is very useful because it could indicate an intruder. So next we're going to, sorry.
Interesting enough, Guard Duty does that. So it actually looks over the cloud trail and then will alert you on any anomalous behavior, which is pretty much exactly what you're talking to.
Yeah, yeah. So it's very good to kind of utilize all of those services, and I guess the big perk about Grafana is that you can kind of get the total observability of all of that kind of through a single pane of glass. So if you have Guard Duty enabled, you can use that with Grafana as well. So an introduction to Grafana. So you've got a bit of a example here of kind of how it can sort of centralize your observability. So it's an open source data visualization tool. So Grafana's specialty is aggregating multiple environment, application, and platform data into one location. It can be organized into dashboards. So it allows teams to have observability over their whole stack. And that's its use case from more of an infrastructure monitoring perspective. So Grafana also has other use cases for more of a kind of a business intelligence tool. You can visualize data from sources like Athena, Redshift, SQL, Jira, Splunk, etc. We're going to be more covering it for more of an infrastructure monitoring standpoint of how to actually monitor your AWS using Grafana. But it's important to note that it can be used for that as well, and you can use it for both use cases in one. So it's really kind of a one-size-fits-all approach. And now we're going to go over what makes Grafana special. And then we're going to have a bit of a talk about how it compares to some of the AWS services you already have. So for one, Grafana has a wide range of plugins available. So these plugins allow you to add additional data sources, such as stuff like Dynatrace or Snowflake, and also different kinds of panel types. So you can visualize your data using new types of charts. So these plugins give you and your business a lot of options when you're setting up your dashboards in terms of how you want to visualize your data and what data you actually want to visualize in the first place. Secondly, Grafana has many dashboards that are pre-built. So let's say you want a dashboard to forecast your AWS costs. There will be a dashboard for that. What if you want to monitor your Kubernetes cluster with something like Prometheus? There will also be a dashboard for that that are all pre-made. So these dashboards, they really allow you to get started and give you a good foundation, kind of a solid base to work from. And thirdly, and lastly, Grafana is open source and has a vibrant community. So Grafana is open source. It is used by a huge amount of the technology community for various use cases, ranging from more kind of the sort of business intelligence stuff we were having to talk about, all the way to infrastructure, observability, and monitoring. So you can download community and official plugins and dashboards. You can also make them yourself. So this is more of a, if you don't have a product that suits your observability needs, you can extend Grafana yourself kind of boat. And so what about comparing it to other AWS services? So we've got CloudWatch dashboards and we've got QuickSight. So these are the two services that I would expect that people who know AWS would go, well, why would I want to use Grafana over these services? So Grafana overlaps a little bit with both of these tools, but it still has its own differences. So that's really one of the amazing things about AWS, is that you have so many different kind of options that you can choose. And while some of them overlap, it really means that you can find pretty much like the right tool for you specifically. So it's really good in that way. So the first tool that we'll compare is CloudWatch dashboards. So the first difference is the kind of metrics that you have available. So CloudWatch dashboards can only view CloudWatch metrics. It is important to note that you can send custom metrics to CloudWatch. So you can actually monitor other data sources, but you need to keep in mind that it will add a lot of complexity. So if you want to have a pretty simple solution, that might be a little bit out of scope for you. The second, so that's if you use third-party metrics. The second difference is accessibility and access. So if you're using CloudWatch, you need to access your dashboards using IAM, whereas using Grafana, you can just set up users so you don't need to actually log in with IAM. So you may not even require any access to any of your AWS resources by using Grafana. So it's pretty good to provide it to other parts of the business, or if you kind of want to have your observability dashboards outside of the AWS console. And the third and final reason is really just customizability. So as we saw on the last slide, Grafana has a wide range of plugins and dashboards available, and it's also completely open source, so you can make your own stuff for it as well. And on CloudWatch, it's pretty simple to set up a dashboard, but if you want very complex ones, you really have the ability to find ones that are made by the community for Grafana, so it can be a lot easier to kind of have a solid base to work from with a lot of those dashboards you can just find online. And now the second service we'll compare it to is QuickSight. So QuickSight is a business intelligence tool. And it can also be used to observe data. And that's where I'd say Grafana differs, is in the data sources that it actually supports. So Grafana supports a wide range of data sources. Some of them that QuickSight also supports too, but it includes a lot more data sources oriented around infrastructure monitoring. So things like Prometheus, Dynatrace, CloudWatch, and X-Ray, as well as other vendor technologies that you might be using inside of AWS or maybe on AWS that QuickSight might not support out of the box. So if you want to analyze your data for the purpose of business intelligence, QuickSight might be best to suit your needs. But if you want to build a tool that can really observe your infrastructure as a whole, I think that's really where Grafana stands out. So that's just my take on how it compares to these other services. So introducing AWS managed Grafana. So we've had a bit of a look at what Grafana can do, and now we're going to go over how the AWS offering differs and all the kind of features that it has. So we'll go over the features here quickly itself. So AWS Managed Grafana is natively integrated with CloudWatch, X-Ray. AWS also has a managed Prometheus offering as well as some other sources. So things like Redshift, Athena. It's also fully integrated into IAM Identity Center. So it means that if you have a landing zone, it can just really easily fit in very seamlessly. It also accesses AWS services using roles and not access keys. So it's a massive security bonus, and I'll go over security later in this presentation, where I'll kind of talk about some of the considerations of security there. And it also allows you to source your data from open source Prometheus. So if you are currently so a really good use case for this is maybe you're migrating from on-premises into AWS, and maybe you are using Prometheus currently on-premises. You can just send that data straight to AWS managed Grafana. You don't really need to reset up all of your monitoring all over again. So you can just fit that right into an AWS managed solution. And finally, it also supports Grafana Enterprise licensing. So we'll touch over the data sources later and how they differ. And you can kind of see what Grafana Enterprise can bring you in your business as far as like additional plugins and things like that. So there are some differences between the self and AWS managed Grafana. So the first difference is, how and where they're hosted, of course. So AWS managed Grafana is hosted in a highly available fashion by AWS. It is fully managed by AWS, of course. So there's nothing really to manage from more of an infrastructure perspective. It's just you just end up deploying it. It's pretty much just a SaaS service. The second difference is its integration. So AWS managed Grafana integrates with a bunch of AWS services just using IAM. So you don't need to use, or I guess using IAM roles, sorry. So you don't need to use static access keys. So you can see up there, I've got does not integrate with AWS services by default. And that's just kind of goes to show that I believe in a very strict policy on security, and I think that that's really one of the places where AWS managed Grafana can really help you. So definitely very beneficial there.
Also, managed Grafana, we also deal with the upgrading when a newer version of Grafana comes out. And anyone that managed a Grafana solution in-house knows that that's an absolute mission to do yourself. Actually, upgrading any platform is an absolute mission.
True. So that is definitely kind of fits in with sort of migrating to more kind of managed services, and I would actually say that's probably also a bit of a security benefit as well. Because you're on the latest version all the time, or at least on the latest version that AWS pushes out. And so just on that note, here's all of the built-in data sources and all the data sources available on the enterprise version. So I won't stay on the slide for very long, but you can see those links down there. So if you want to check out whether it supports all the sources that you would want to ingest, you can go ahead and check that out down there. And now onto security. So this is a really important slide because security, especially these days, is a really big deal. So first of all of the data that is stored in AWS Grafana is fully encrypted at rest. So it uses AWS managed keys. You cannot see the keys, but it is managed by AWS. And data is also encrypted in transit using SSL. AWS Grafana is also integrated with CloudTrail. So this not only means that your Grafana workspace changes are logged, but even the changes inside of Grafana itself are also logged. So this is really valuable because if you have an AWS landing zone deployed with Control Tower, AWS Grafana will fit right in with how Control Towers kind of set you all up as far as like logging and auditing is concerned. So about Control Tower, one of my colleagues, Martin Carrolls, he did a presentation earlier this year that kind of goes over a bit about Control Tower if you're interested in that. So that's something that's cool as well. You might be able to see that on the YouTube. And it's also accessible via a VPC endpoint. So you can set up a private link endpoint to access the Grafana APIs, but it is your responsibility to secure that endpoint down. A really big point now is that it uses IAM roles instead of access keys. So this makes Grafana a very good choice for any organization that wants to visualize any data from AWS. Because, I mean, we just need to kind of remember all of the recent data breaches and things like that have been in the media. And at some level, most of these breaches were either possible due to, being on an older version, such as, kind of more sort of vulnerabilities and things like that. So as Casey was saying, it is fully managed. So all those upgrades, they are fully automatic. And also too is credentials. So at some level, these breaches were due to some kind of mismanagement in credentials, or at least many of them were. And so we can just avoid that whole issue by just using something like AWS Managed Grafana instead of having to deal with another set of credentials that could at some point be exploited. So we also have the centralized access control using IAM Identity Center. You can also use SAML with that as well, but that's more of a case that if you know you were going to use a SAML, then I wouldn't just use SAML because you think that it's something that will work for you. I would always choose IAM Identity Center. And lastly, a point on the shared responsibility model. So just make sure to remember that. So AWS maintains control over the infrastructure that Grafana runs on, but it's up to you to ensure that you secure all of your communications with the service, and that your AWS accounts are all secure and control what level of access your organization has. So now we've kind of been over the theoretical. Let's start diving into how to actually deploy Amazon Managed Grafana. So you can create a new Grafana workspace. So just a note about what a workspace actually is. It's pretty much an instance of Grafana. So you can have multiple dashboards and your own kind of access control and all that sort of stuff per workspace. So it's pretty handy there. And if you have an organization, it can also access all of your metrics across a certain OU. So it's very handy there because you can just kind of centrally monitor things from multiple accounts. So I would actually recommend deploying Grafana across your organization, as opposed to just inside of one account, as it just makes some observability simpler. So to get started, you just go and you navigate to the Amazon Grafana service, and then you just click on Create Workspace. Simple as that. And then you can specify the workspace details. So just a name, and a description, and some tags. Now, because we're on the topic of observability, I think it's really important to mention tagging here. Because when it comes to observability, tagging your resources can let you better organize your resources and let you build more comprehensive observability solutions, because you can kind of differentiate better between what is what and build more kind of customized dashboards.
On that note, for tagging as well, just jump in. It is highly recommended you tag all of your infrastructure anyway, because if you have different cost centers or projects that generally will utilize the same infrastructure AWS account, then yeah, it allows you to have a level of understanding of the costs to deliver that solution. And if you're in the SaaS world, actually just after this stream itself, we have a SaaS on AWS stream, where it's going to be talking about analytics. But when you are a SaaS business, you need to understand the costs you serve. And if you have multiple products, then having that tagging strategy or different accounts is really key as well.
Yeah, for sure. I would definitely agree there. Tagging is really beneficial. So now on the next step, we need to choose what kind of authentication we're going to use. So I think I've already been over a little bit about the differences between SAML and IAM Identity Center. Generally, if you know you're going to use SAML, then you know you're going to use it. If you don't know, or you're a bit unsure, I just recommend you just use IAM Identity Center. If you've already set up Control Tower, IAM Identity Center will already be set up for you. It just makes it really easy to just essentially manage all the access controls. And you can also just access your Grafana workspaces right from the apps console. So that's really, really handy. And I'll show you that a little bit later on in the presentation. And you also must choose how your permissions will be managed. So the Grafana service can manage your permissions for you, or you can manage and create your policies yourself. I would recommend using just the service managed approach in all circumstances, unless you're very familiar with AWS already, or maybe you're deploying it through infrastructure as code. In which case it makes sense to just deploy everything through that. But pretty much in all cases, I would recommend just using service managed. Makes it a bit easier, and we'll show later on how Grafana manages those for you. So you can see you have the service managed permission settings. So here's where you can define where it is actually deployed. And you can also define what kind of resources you want Grafana to have access to. So it isn't shown here, but when you select the organization, you'll be asked to specify an OU. And so that's pretty much just kind of a grouping of accounts to make managing your organization a bit easier. So you'll kind of give it an OU, which will sort of be a range of accounts. And so what this service will do is it'll deploy a CloudFormation stack that will pretty much, it will look inside of the OU. It'll find all of the accounts, and it will go ahead and it will deploy roles and policies to allow Grafana to access all of these services that we've got listed here. So you can change this later on, but just make sure you select all the services that you want to be able to ingest into Grafana. Now it's important to note, this doesn't actually automatically add them as a data source into Grafana. It just provisions all of the required roles and policies and that sort of stuff beforehand. So it's pretty useful there, but just something important to note. And lastly, if you don't know about OUs and want to know a bit more about it, I think I mentioned a bit earlier, there was a presentation this year, a bit earlier this year, by a colleague of mine, Martin Carrolls, which goes over kind control tower and kind of touches a bit on organizations, OUs and stuff like that. So if you don't know much about that, that's a good resource there as well. And so once you've created the workspace and you click on create workspace, you'll have to wait a bit while it's getting created. You'll have to assign a new user full access to Grafana. So all you do is you click on that button there, you pop in, you go ahead and you just select the account of the group you want to give full access, and then you can just provide it with administrative access to Grafana that way. And then you'll also see here that there will be a Grafana workspace URL. So that's the one you want to keep in mind. And that's the one that you will use to access your Grafana instance using. And here's the cool part about using IAM Identity Center. So when you log into your AWS using IAM Identity Center, you'll just kind of get a screen like this. That'll kind of be like the app screen where you can use and access all the different AWS accounts. So it's really handy because you can just log in using this and just click on the workspace and access Grafana that way. So it's really handy to deploy it that way. So a couple other things to note as well. So you can add and remove data sources using the Grafana console later, as well as I mentioned before. So you're not locked into doing it during the setup. It doesn't actually add them inside of Grafana as well, just to reiterate that, but it gives you all the permissions to be able to do it in a credential-less fashion. And once again, to reiterate something more, so if you choose to deploy Grafana in an organization, you'll be asked for an OU, and it will go ahead and it will run the CloudFormation templates across those accounts. And it will also be reversed if you choose to take down the workspace. So it means that it'll all be clean and managed for you. And each workspace is eligible for a 30-day trial of Grafana Enterprise. So you saw those data sources earlier. So if you want to use some of the stuff, or you want to at least trial some of the stuff in the Grafana Enterprise version, you can use that for 30 days. So make sure you set up a calendar appointment if you don't want to be charged for that. And Amazon charges you based on the user licenses and provides you with a free 90-day trial with up to 5 users per account. So deploying Grafana for your own sandbox environment, it won't cost you any money as long as you stick within the trial limits. But of course, make sure that you read and you consult the AWS documentation beforehand, so you can make sure that you're up to date on how much you can use for free. So now we're going to continue with getting started. So as we've been a bit of before, when you set up those data sources as you go through the setup of your Grafana workspace, it just creates all of the roles and all of the policies so that Grafana can access those services in more of a credential-less fashion. So now you actually have to go and actually add them in so they can be used inside of Grafana, and you can start visualizing those metrics. So I've just got the instructions there on the screen. So you just go to the data sources. There'll be a little AWS icon there on the left-hand bar, and you just select the service that you wish to import metrics from. You choose the region, and then you choose the AWS account you want to import the metrics from, and then you just add the data source. So it's very cool if you deploy it to an organization, because you can just pick and choose what you want to import. So it's very cool there as well.
Can you select multiple AWS regions easily, or do you have to just go through the process multiple times?
Yep. So actually doing it in different AWS regions, you have to add those data sources separately, but you can add multiple data sources at the same time for the same region. So you can kind of see down there, I've added 2 CloudWatch data sources. They're both in the same region, but they're on different accounts. So it's pretty useful to be able to get, all that kind of account metric, all the kind of account metrics in the same place. You can do that with CloudWatch dashboards as well, but it's a bit more. It can take a bit to set up. So this is just kind of a one click and boom, it's all there. And so now you can actually get on to creating your dashboards as well. So all you need to do is you can go and you can find a dashboard. So Grafana has a large marketplace where you can just go and pretty much just find a whole bunch of dashboards. So over here, I'm just using I'm going to be visualizing some CloudWatch log metrics there. But really, you can go and find any kind of dashboard online, or you can just build one yourself. You can see I've got the import create there. So you can just go onto the create and create your own, or you can go down to the drop down there and click on import and just type in the code or import it in a JSON or whatever. So if you are migrating from one Grafana instance to another, first of all, I would consult the AWS documentation. But second of all, you should be able to migrate your dashboards pretty easily and just use a better credential-less data source, since I don't like access keys. So by using it in a credential-less fashion, you just omit a whole risk there. You get to avoid that whole risk and just reduce your attack surface.
And if you're in doubt there, either reach out to your account SA or to your partner that is actively managing your account or your project.
Yep, that's spot on. And now you can actually view that data. So you can see right over there, I've imported the dashboard. So the metrics, because when we import them, it's just like importing it just like any other Grafana IO metric or any other Grafana data source, sorry. So it means that we can just view all that data in whatever dashboard that we import that supports that data source. And now you're also free to go ahead and add any plugins or any additional data sources that you want. So you can add any third-party data sources and all your plugins. And plugins can include a wide range of different things. I've kind of been over at the start of the presentation, but you've also got a lot of data sources in there as well. So one that I'll be using is kind of a demonstration of also monitoring additional data sources using Grafana as well. We'll be using the Prometheus data source. So you can monitor other data sources in here as well. Or I guess I should use the term observe different data sources, although you can also do a monitoring and alerting inside of Grafana as well. So you've got those options there. And you've got the plugins so essentially these are just the different dashboards that I've got that are set up. So here's kind of an example using Prometheus. So I'm actually using the Amazon managed Prometheus service, and I'm just collecting some metrics from my Windows and my Linux EC2 instances. So it's a bit later on in the presentation if you want to learn more about Amazon managed Prometheus, and then we'll have a bit of a talk about the observability workshop, which might go on for a bit longer since that is very cool. And just to note as well is that you can really split up these workspaces kind of however you want. So it's very cool because you aren't limited to having only one Grafana instance. So you can kind of design your architecture as to how you want your Grafana workspaces to be. You could have, for example, a workspace per team. You could have a workspace per service even. I mean, you can have all kinds of different workspaces. I believe the default limit is 5 per account, but I think you can reach out to AWS support to get that extended. And so now we have some usage examples. So here are some examples of how you could use Grafana to improve your observability. So in our first example, we have providing some financial observability. So you could include some CloudWatch metrics in there as well. and even some third-party some third-party AI monitoring tools and some databases, all that sort of stuff to gain some observability over how well your resources are being u- utilized. You could also forecast your cloud spend, um, and just get some really cool forecasting there in there with whatever tools you use, and that way you can kind of provide a sort of centralized dashboard so that the rest of your business can see how your cloud is, how AWS is improving, is I guess reducing your costs and all that sort of stuff. So very cool. And in our second example, we go over Grafana. We go over how we go over using Grafana to monitor a landing zone. So we can monitor all of our accounts, and also use data sources from CloudWatch and X-Ray, and we can create different workspaces and dashboards for our teams, so they can get a single pane of glass each, which they can all kind of customize to suit their needs, without impacting AWS, and they can all observe their own workloads through their own workspace. So some pretty cool stuff there as well.
Yeah, the real key there is because you're giving the teams the ability to create their own dashboards and that flexibility, really, it means that the leaders of that workstream or business unit can now have a view that is 100% customized to them,
Yeah,
and to get insights and actually make decisions that are ultimately going to be implemented, by the floor. Like a lot of the time, you get the ones where the C level will make a decision, but it never actually gets implemented because it doesn't make sense at the lower levels. So this is really trying to, turn that around, give that power to the people that have all of that domain knowledge and are impacted by it day to day to optimize their own workflows to the ultimate metrics of the business.
yeah, 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 spot on there. And now the last one here is kind of really kind of touching on that hybrid cloud note. So we've got hybrid cloud monitoring. So you can see here that we are using Prometheus. So this could be really anywhere. It could be I'm on premises, or on the edge, or wherever. And we're also using it inside of AWS. Perhaps we want to use it for that kind of additional sort of workload specific monitoring, but we could also use the CloudWatch agent and just kind of filter all that data into Grafana. So we can use kind of like a combination of two tools, and that just gets filtered through to the Amazon managed Prometheus service, and that goes straight up to Grafana. And something cool to note about that is that it is also credentialless. So that means that you don't need to use any credentials to access Prometheus. It's all done through IAM roles and IAM access. So IAM policies, sorry. So it just makes it really easy to set up and use. And you can see that they can use a AWS managed Grafana to kind of get that single pane of glass kind of over their whole infrastructure from one place. So you can kind of see where I'm sort of talking about the differences between CloudWatch dashboards and QuickSight. So QuickSight you can do some pretty cool stuff with, but it might not necessarily be the best for actually observing your infrastructure. So that's really where I see Grafana fitting in.
Also, with hybrid cloud, do look into IAM roles anywhere. I think
Yeah,
about 2 weeks ago we had a presentation on it. It really streamlines and secures that whole process down a lot tighter than, as we mentioned before, the access keys. Long-lived access keys and secrets are always detrimental in the long run. And a single point of failure, especially as those permission sets can get quite wide.
yeah, for sure. IAM roles, anywhere is very, very good with that, especially if using somewhere like other CloudWatch agent, where you might need that kind of authentication into AWS. Using IAM roles anywhere is really cool, and there's some cool automation that you can do around deploying that out as well, which is very cool too. And Amazon managed Prometheus. So I don't have enough time to actually discuss it, although we might have a bit of time to discuss it after the slide, to kind of go over sort of what it can mean, just kind of free sort of discussion. But I decided to write up a blog post. There's going to come up soon, where we're going to pretty much extend this sort of presentation, and I'll guide you through actually deploying Amazon managed Prometheus. I'm understanding how it works, and also I'm integrating that into Amazon managed Grafana. So that pretty much means that this last user's example, you'll pretty much be guided on setting that up for yourself. So if you want to monitor kind of a hybrid cloud, it's great to pay attention to something like that. And lastly, we have the AWS observability workshop. So this is really cool, and I just wanted to bring this up. So you can access the workshop on that link there. And what it is it's kind of a self-paced set of labs that AWS provides you with that you can use. Now, it's important to know that if you're just doing it on your own and it's self-paced, you'll need to use your own AWS account. And so that means you could be charged for using some of this stuff. But a lot of it can also stay within the free tier as well. And it goes over all of these services. So it goes over all of the AWS native ones, as well as all the open source ones that are also managed by AWS as well. And so it really allows you to get a solid hands-on overview of all the services that you have, and you can choose for yourself, hey, do I want to use something like Amazon managed Grafana, or do I want to use something AWS native? Do I need the more kind of open source capabilities, or do I want to use something that's more AWS native? And you've got some cool stuff in there as well, like MRUM and stuff like that. So you can go, hey, look, I want to get that extra observability over like my site, over my site users and stuff like that. Perhaps you want to set up stuff like X-Ray as well. You've got all these cool stuff you can do there, as well as the Amazon managed Prometheus. If you're very interested in that, stay tuned to see my blog post later tonight. That will kind of take you through all that stuff. And one final note there as well is that if you are a Spark Group customer, we can always run some immersion days for you as well if you want something more private. But yeah, that workshop there is very good, and it is free, although make sure you stay within the free tier if you don't want to get charged for anything. But it's a great way to get your hands dirty. And that's it from me. So we've got a while now for some questions we can go over.
That was awesome. So while we wait for any questions, if the audience has them, I think I also just want to mention that directly after us at 1:30 New Zealand time, or if I can do some math right, I think that's 11:30 Australian time. Jeff, daylight savings has come into play. I know that's crazy. Yeah, that's the SaaS on AWS. They're running into dive in analytics. So if you're in the SaaS space and looking at analytics and how they can help you, definitely stay tuned for that. I see that someone has a one come through, but I'm not entirely sure their full intent. They've said for EKS. I'm wondering. So I'm assuming that is there any integration to EKS in that service for Grafana?
Yeah. So there's ways you can monitor EKS using Grafana. So probably you can do it through CloudWatch if you've got some of that more basic CloudWatch monitoring. So there are some use cases which I will go over in my blog post, how you can kind of ingest Prometheus metrics into AWS CloudWatch and do it that way. But you can also set up the Amazon managed Prometheus service, and you can also do it that way. So you're more kind of setting up some monitoring inside of AWS for your EKS workload, and then using Grafana to get that kind of observability over what you're monitoring.
Actually, there's just been a little bit more text come from that. The full one is for EKS. Would you recommend managed Grafana with Protheus or Fluent D sidecar?
So, as far as my own experience and what I've got experience with, I would say Prometheus is just generally what I've always stuck to, and it's worked pretty well for me. Um, the managed Prometheus service as well is really really handy, and they've got some good guides for setting it up so you can monitor MEKS workloads as well. So if you're already using something like Fluent D, you may not need it. But if you are looking for a monitoring solution and you are using MEKS, I would certainly use all the AWS managed services that you have available, because that allows you to kind of get stuff done in the as close as you can to credentialness. And it's of course it's all fully managed for you as well.
And someone's asking, can we post the workshop link again? So if you go back to the workshop link, I will grab it and then post it in chat for people.
Yeah,
Observe
yeah.
it. Observe. Let's
So
just
it's
make
very
sure.
very cool. Yeah, so it goes over all of those services there. So it's really really handy.
Yeah, okay, yeah, grab the link. I will put that through now. Oh, yeah. Martin, as always, beats me to it. He always makes me look bad. Damn you, Martin.
Yeah, he's actually got a really cool presentation on all that cloud watch stuff. He has a really good blog as well, actually. Might not be able to share it here, but you should be able to you Google it and find some cool stuff. He's very very smart.
Yeah, oh, now someone's keeping tabs of like how much I'm losing to Martin. God, that's not good. Um, So in terms of that front, yeah, Levin has a wealth of expertise. Martin, I think Chris McKennell as well also have a blog post that I think some of his blog posts actually made it to the AWS Reddit channel and to last week in the AWS, which is pretty exciting. Michael, as you mentioned, you also have a blog. So yeah, there's definitely lots of good learning materials out there. Um, I've why we wait for any more questions or stuff to come through. I just want to thank you for taking your time out of your day to, come here, put this presentation together. It's been amazing. I've learned a lot through this whole hosting as well from this presentation, so that's awesome. So thank you very much.
Nice, nice. Hey, thank you for having me. Yeah. So here's that link to my blog as well, by the way, for that person who asked about Amazon managed Prometheus. So if you check out tomorrow, it should be up. It'll be a bit of a blog post that will kind of guide you through how that works. And so it'll kind of be up to you to sort of decide on what you think is best for your situation. But hopefully this will kind of give you a bit of insight into how it'll work and how it'll kind of suit your needs, and what option that you think works the best for you.
Awesome. Cool. And also if you have missed the start of the stream where he went over a lot of the Foundation's high level stuff, this will be available on demand after the stream ends, which will be very shortly. We also have a From the Field YouTube channel that archives every single one of these streams we do, because Twitch only has a 90-day life cycle on this content. So yeah, if you want, you can go to our From the Field YouTube channel and yeah, get from there. I think we'll leave it at that because I don't see any more questions come through. Thank you very much to all of our audience to paying attention and being engaged as you are. And again, thank you very much, Michael, for sharing your knowledge and for living to allow us to borrow your expertise and time.
Oh, nice. Thank you.
And I see Martin just sneaked in there again. I was just about to get that link. Ah, oh, it's gonna be one of those days. And with that, I will say, Marty, what, and everyone enjoy your week and your weekend that's coming up.